So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about form studies, well, a lot of it, and why they're important. And I've talked about it a lot already, so I'm going to try to focus on the specific form study in this case and just quantify and qualify and do all of that. And then I'll be taking a look at this male face 14-day challenge. Two completely different categories, but I'm going to try to bridge the gap in between them somehow in some really funny segue. But before I get started, if you want to submit your work for critique, if you have done a form study and you want it looked at, and if it is fitting the category that I'm covering that day, or if it matches a theme that's been uploaded, you most likely will make it into a video. All you have to do is go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon. It used to be Google+, but Google+ is shutting down April 2nd, so please stop using Google+. Go here, read it, and it's really easy to use Reddit, really super easy. I recommend you guys post images just like here and comment for a description of what you're going for. That way you can see the preview of the image, and people will most likely critique you if you have a preview available for your image. People will have a difficult time kind of jumping in and wanting to even look at your work if you don't even have it up. That's the one downside of losing Google+, is because it was an image wall, which was really, really cool. This can behave just like an image wall if you guys upload images, not posts. I'm not sure how to disable it. I wish we could disable posts and not disable image posts. Like written posts are disabled, image posts are enabled only. That way we get images, we get previews of what it is we're going to be looking at. We click on it, we go down here, and then we see your post here. So thank you, Chloe, for doing it right. Please, people, do it right so that we can see your image and you can invite people to actually jump in and critique your work. This is amazing, by the way, Chloe. Another announcement is Patreon. If you guys are interested in joining us for Patreon, the Villain Challenge is hosted at the moment on Patreon, along with a number of other early studies that you can do instead of doing a full illustration. You also have the option of doing assignments from previous months. So if you want to join as an apprentice, you'll get access to the Discord, and you'll support the channel and support me, which is a kind of a win-win. And then we have Portrait Studio. So if you guys don't know what Portrait Studio is, I've been trying to promote it as much as possible between now and the next sale. The next sale will be at the end of spring or start of summer, or at the start of spring. I'm not sure if I want to have people wait that long before they get it on sale. The sale is usually 50% off. So you most likely will have to wait if you want a copy of it, but I do want to promote it from now until the sale. For those who are interested in owning a copy, Portrait Studio will also receive another overhaul update. We'll have fabric studies available for those who want to study fabric. I'll try to sculpt some myself when I find the time. But if you don't know how to use Portrait Studio, go to istebrak.com, click on the store icon, click on Portrait Studio, and scroll down, and we have a number of videos posted on how to use it and all of its features. It's a full-length, in-depth tutorial created by Abu himself. He'll teach you how to use it and what it offers and how to build these beautiful scenes so you can generate references from your desktop, and all kinds of references, movable figures, posable figures. I've posed one here already of a girl bowing. There's just so many ways to work with it. I also have it on my front page on YouTube. You can find a reference, pose it on Portrait Studio, find a different camera angle. If the reference you found on Google wasn't the right angle, you can get the exact angle you want. You have light control. You have everything at your fingertips. If the price is a little too steep right now, we've tried to keep it as fair as possible considering how much we've invested in it. But if it's too steep, you can always wait for the summer sale, which will happen again sometime at the end of spring or start of summer. Thank you to everyone who's bought it and supported us. And that's it. Please join Reddit and post images. Thank you. Let's get started. So let me close Portrait Studio. It is a bit RAM heavy, so you have to look up your RAM, look up your specs, email Abu through Squarespace, through my website, sorry, and it'll let you send a message directly to our emails. And if you have questions about the qualifications of like your computer, if it's the right kind, if it's not, if you need to upgrade before investing into Portrait Studio, we can let you know about all of that. But it does have system requirements written on the checkout page if you want to check that out. Form studies. Okay. So if form studies was set up in a specific order of tasks, let's make a task list of form studies. For forms for beginners who don't know how to use or don't even know what form studies are, let's set up a task list and use the audience to help us set up this list. So what is the very, very first question you ask yourself when it comes to a form study? What is question number 1? And this one question is why you have a lot of mistakes, because you forgot this question essentially, or you weren't thinking of this question. What is the very, very first question you ask? And this task list it's different each time, but it always starts with the same question, by the way. But it's sometimes part 2 or part 3 can vary between different artists. Some artists want to rush their highlights before midtones. Some artists want to do this. Some artists want to do that. But this task list should help you get started. I will also add to it as we go. So what is question number 1? What is the very first thing we think about when we Reddit isn't chronological because you don't have it set on new. You have to go to Reddit and set it on new. So let's go to Reddit together. Alright. If you set it on the newest, it is chronological. 1 hour ago, just like it would be in Google Plus page. Okay, so if you set it on new, you can see it. Hot is just, I don't know, something Reddit offers to make things popular or to, promote posts or something like that. You can just set it up on new and it'll show you the newest. Where is the light source? Exactly, excellent question. Light source. So if we ask the light source, hello, Mr. Light Source, where are you? Oh, I'm over here. I'm pointing this way. How is it that you're pointing this way? Oh, well, the cast shadow here is creating a vanishing point, and this vanishing point travels all the way out here, and this is the universal light source. And so the light source is pointing in, let's say, in perfect alignment. So the point would be here. In perfect alignment with the vanishing point of the cast shadow. So this is the light source, okay? So that, let's critique based off that first part of the list. And set up your lists for me, okay? So we still have part 2, part 3, part 4, or step 4 of this list. So we've got this light source, we've got some questions. What the heck is this? So if this has been singularly painted, like if someone came in with some black, just wanted to troll the artist and just painted this black and painted this black and only some areas he painted black, then it would explain why this area is so dark. But because the light source is here, part 2 of what to do with your form studies is to ask, what is my geometry? What is my geometry essentially? And by asking the geometry question, you're asking the surface area, like exposure question. Which areas look in which direction? If these areas had eyes in them, would they see the light source? If they do, check mark, that's a light area. If the eyes are somewhat, they are visible, but they're somewhat looking at the light source, they will get some light. But the light source is coming from the top down. You threw in a cast shadow. But this is the lightest area, even though this looks most efficiently at the light source. It's like a parallel line between the light source line and the direction of exposure for this vector on the surface area. They're all exposed to the same, they're all matching. They're a perfect match. They're parallel, meaning this is perfectly the most exposed. So part 2 is a little complicated because when you find your geometry, so find geo, which is a very general term. Next step would be find the lightest. Find lightest. And of course, find darkest. Alright? So if this is the lightest area, this is the most exposed, darkest area, and this is tricky, in relation to the camera, so via camera. Because the camera can't see the darkest dark back here. It doesn't look all the way back there. It's just in relation to what the camera can see, because of course that's what concerns you. What would be the most displaced out of all of these? So you've got this one looking this direction, this one looking this direction, this one looking down, but it might get some bounce light from the ground, which forget about that for now. This one is looking in this direction. So these are all pretty much on average looking away from the light. This is the least light of the shadowed area. And you can even work from the shadowed area light to dark. Find the lightest shadow and the darkest shadow. Find the darkest light area and the lightest light area. This is a beautiful list to follow because it helps you organize what you're doing. And when we're finding the lightest and finding the darkest, what we're doing here is, let me just get rid of these lines. We're finding the average, but we're also finding this is the core shadow line. Past this line of deviation, like this little line here, things got dark because we found a cliff and we fell off the cliff. Light can't access this area anymore because the light's coming from top down. Maybe this area is a little bit exposed. It might get some because it's, if it was an angle that you measured with a protractor, it's not that displaced, it's still acute. But these guys have an obtuse angle all the way, almost 180 degree displacement, just flat measurement with a protractor. Displacement from the light source. So everything past this line should be on average much darker because all of the arrows are pretty much looking in the same direction. They're all concerned with this guy over here. Alright, he's got one eye for some reason. And then everything on this side is all on average looking toward or slightly away from the light source, sometimes directly at the light source. Okay, so your values here should never be similar to your values here or else your value sharing. Another problem that you have in your fine geometry in this piece is that you don't have a flat surface. What is this guy doing? What's happening? Is it a flat paper? Why is it that we have a cut in the values? This value is different from this value, but there's no cut in the form. So finding geometry is a complicated question because you're asking, like, what is my form and does it have a ground? I mean, you don't have a ground to any of these. You could have just cut this off like that and you could have had a nice, like, square ground floor footing to the base of the shape. You actually have a base to the shape. This one is beautiful because you actually have a base to it. You're even overlapping. That's wonderful. You have this like little crevice there. So I'm going to get rid of these crazy lines. And I'm going to start applying these changes. What are some other things we can add to this list? So we've got light source direction. The light source has conditions to it. What is the magnitude of the light source? Is it a sun or is it a candle? What is the direction? What is the type of light source, which is magnitude? What is the color? So the light source has a lot of, it's also asking time of day. Okay, it could be a sun, but it could be through a bunch of clouds, and the light source that had a very sharp laser starts to disperse into really light versions of it, making all the cast shadows behave really fuzzy because there's just multiple little rays instead of one sharp ray that if it was a clear day you just get bam, bam, and then cast shadows are bam. But if it's cloudy, then you get all these little dispersions, and the light is more dim, and the clouds are nice and low, and all that light that's sat up here is big blanket just stopping it. So this affects the way your cast shadows look, affects how light you go, affects how dark you go. This all comes back to help you when you're drawing a picture of a lady sitting down by a window in a closed room, and it's like if you're drawing Jane Eyre and it's gloomy outside and she's depressed and she's sitting by a globe and she's just chilling. Or if you're drawing a beautiful, magical, mystical fantasy knight flying in the sky with a horse with 3 heads, then it's a beautiful sunlit environment and you have a blue sky. A form study is going to come back and help you break all of that down, what your darkest value is, even if you're even allowed to have dark values. So what is the geometry? Find lightest, find darkest. And this task list is not a list of fundamentals more. The first rule, yeah, it's a fundamental. That's why it's number 1. But number 2, number 3, number 4 is just ways to help you organize your thinking. Okay, so it's a task list or a list of things to do with a form study that'll help you organize your general application. So let's correct this stuff. Light source, before I even get to do that, I have one more thing to add to the light source, and that's why it's so amazing, because it's connected to everything, is your light environment. So what are the 3 components of a light environment for anyone who is new here? What are the 3 main booties? Okay. I'm just going to wait for these answers. Hello, Katie. How are you? Nice to see you here. How are you doing? The cast shadow depends on the local color of the object that is cast on, as well as the ambient and bounce light. Now, ambient light is the bounce light. We would just diffuse it based off that. We'd diffuse it based off what kind of bounce light the ambience is causing. But I'm not seeing any answers. What's going on? Does no one know? What are the 3 components of a light environment? I know you guys know them. Alright. I'm just going to sit here and wait for them. Don't make me cave. Light source. What is it to? Magnitude and direction. Good. I hope you are feeling good today. And I'll see you too. Yep. I feel great. Thank you, Katie. Alright, I'm just going to do them. I think you guys honestly forgot. Alright, so the light source, the environment or the room, and the object. These are the three components of of a light environment. The 3 things that control the room, that control everything. And they are in this exact order because that's how they work. Oh my gosh, you guys don't know. Shame. I cannot believe you guys don't memorize this stuff. The light source affects how bright the background is, which affects how bright the object is, period. So what we need to do is brighten the background first, because it makes no sense why you're getting such bright points and such dark points. There's no sense here. There's no logic. So I'm going to raise the value based off the highlights you chose. I always choose highlights because bright background is better. And it's good for learning. Dark background is more of a specific condition. And then now that I've done that, I'm just going to separate all of these from their background. Okay, I'm going to start quantifying that lightest and darkest business. So what we have here is the Terminator line, if you guys remember. And I'm going to use this line to find the average dark and average light for all the arrows that look in this direction and all the arrows look in this direction. And this fix alone should help us, figure out what's wrong with the painting and should help us fix it as efficiently as possible. So I'm going to choose this value, this mid-tone-ish value, and illuminate all of this half into one simple little average. Okay, and then I'm going to select inverse, and I'm on a locked layer. I'm going to choose this value to average out this half. I'm going to go back and forth, see what really is light. So now that I've averaged them in general, they're still all in the wrong direction because from where the light source was coming from, it doesn't make much sense that some of these are brighter than other areas. So the fact that we have these arrows, so let's just say that we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and I labeled them. I'd find which one is the brightest point, and that's what I would designate, and I'd find things that are parallel to that and then give them the same value. So again, if the light source is coming from here, which of these are the most exposed? I would say this surface is the most exposed. So this little guy here, that's a big boy actually, and I would give him the brightest. So we're finding lightest and finding darkest. We're going backward now because what you did was you kind of damaged this light. Okay, so maybe I'll give it a value. I need to lighten the background in order to do that. And then I'm going to find anything that has a similar or near similar exposure to this exact value. Alright, now we've got this surface here, which is almost exactly same angle. We're just going to focus on this today. Maybe I won't even get to the face. And then I'm going to find that this guy here, he's also pretty exposed. And then I'm going to try to find second place next. So second place most exposed would be this and this. These two have the exact same tilt. So I'm going to give them both the same value. And when you think like this, when you force your brain to think like this, there will be no reference that sneaks up on you. No painting that is too difficult. And then this guy, he's almost exactly this, but he's got a little bit of a tilt, so he would not be anywhere near a shadow color. But he would be something like a fraction below this dude. And then you've got all these light areas, and let's just, this guy is almost as exposed as this, but not yet, not fully. So I would just give him a slight little raising like that. And then this dude here, he's between this reflector, this reflector, this reflector, this reflector. So now we think about bounce light, and you can add number 5 as find the bounce light. But bounce light, students like to think that bounce light is this rim light, and it's not. Bounce light has already been considered in that we've factored it into the shadow color of the light region. This area, I wouldn't really let it be this dark. I'm thinking about it. It's between a bunch of reflectors. Let me give it an average first. And then I think it would get a bit more light because it's not really a shadow. It's not looking away. It's definitely pointing up. Not directly at, but up. Okay, and then we're thinking about that other side now. So, select inverse. Oh, no. Deselect. I have to reselect the shadows. Now the shadows need their own little area. So let's say in relation to the camera, what is the most displaced? I would say this surface is the most displaced. And since that we've averaged it out to be a lighter shape, you can darken the shape and keep darker values. I'd say this is the most dark we're going to get for this shape. Right, the ground is pretty light. That means the cast shadow isn't going to get that dark. Cast shadow is going to do that a little bit. And since I've decided this is my darkest area, all of the areas here that were designated as dark get to go a little bit lighter because they're right beside a really lit area here. So I'm going to average it out first. Get the lightest light. Cut it down, and that's what I'm applying to the shadows on the lighter half. There's just so many reflectors nearby. And this one would be even brighter than this one because its reflector is right beside. Just like so. Which is this surface. So let's move on. We've decided that this area here is the darkest. This one is only a slight fraction, a slight drop from it. So it gets something similar. This brush is killing me. Alright. This is actually looking up in the dark area, so it doesn't even get to stay in the... It's still dark. It's still technically displaced from the light source, but remember it was an acute angle. So it gets to have one of these. And slowly but surely, things are making a little bit more sense. And the shape is matching its environment. The shape has a believable separation between light and shadow. And the shape has, it makes sense. All of the surfaces are that point to the light source are getting light. So those are all the 3 ways to keep things one of the ways to keep things looking 3-dimensional in your art. Just match everything together. Keep everything looking similar. This guy is getting a bit of a reflection. He is displaced exactly the same as this, but it's higher up, getting more reflection on it from this surface, but it's still on average a darker value. I think this one here, I'm starting to feel it wouldn't really be that dark since it's pointing up. If it's in the shadow area and it points up, it doesn't really behave as much as a shadow anymore. And this guy is all the way at the top, probably getting a lot of reflection. Now just diffuse it with a little bit of that. So now this shape looks 3-dimensional. The shape looks accurate. This part here might be exactly aligned with some bounce light coming off the ground, but remember, it's like an ambience. It's a general ambience. It's not one particular ray. So it might get diffused just a touch. And you can darken this whole thing. You can lighten the background a little bit. It would still make sense. You have a lot of motion, a lot of range, a lot of wiggle room. Right, still looks okay. I would lighten the highlights, yeah, definitely. You have little extra areas here, little breaks here and there that are kind of throwing me off. So I'm going to try to find here what I'm looking at. So it might be the exact value of the light source, of the highest light source. It might be even lighter, that little rim, that little extra bit. And then these dudes being so high up, I'm going to select them both at the same time if I want to change them because they're parallel. They might get a little bit more light exposure because they're definitely not this guy. This guy is looking away. And this guy is definitely not this guy. So he gets slightly done. See how I'm just going back and forth and my opacity is decreasing less and less until things make sense. This guy and this guy almost exactly displaced, but he's definitely not him since look at this little corner. He's looking down, he's looking up. Not exactly the most ideal exposure for bounce light, but this is definitely ideal because when light hits the ground, bounces back up. Hits the ground, bounces back up. This and this are slightly the same. So I would keep their values similar. My opacity is going lower and lower as I correct and apply. Alright, and then the cast shadow, because I lighten the background, I lighten the cast shadow. Cast shadow doesn't make much sense though. The light coming from this direction, we would have cast shadow starting over here, coinciding with that corner. So corner, corner, and then we've got the shape of the dude. So this, I need to cut this off, and then I'm just gonna do this instead. Oopsie, flatten image, darken, just like that, and then I'm gonna just cut this bit off. Because I can't go on measuring every single side. No, it looks terrible. I have to. We've got that, and then that. So, corner, inner, and then corner moving in, edge. Don't really know what this little notch is now. That's a little extra bit there. And then all cast shadows blur the further they get from the object casting them. And that blur also results in a diffusion. Okay. Oops. Alright, so now things make a little bit more sense. In order to make sense of this, we have to give it a ground, which means I'm just going to get rid of the cast shadow for now. If you're having trouble figuring out basics like the surface and the geometry, if you're having trouble at fine geometry level, forget cast shadows for now. Just focus on what you're doing. And you have a little notch there, but the notch is kind of, it disappears, that little extra step, when you, go to the other side. So try to match what's happening. Make sense of the object. And it's just stacking cubes. Write this back to me. Form studies, geometric form studies is just stacking cubes. That's all you're doing. This doesn't make much sense because, like, unless this is cut off. So I'm going to cut this off. So if you're having trouble creating a continuity between everything in the piece, remember, you're stacking cubes. If you can render a cube, you can do a complicated geometric form study, a complicated polygon, because you're just stacking these cubes that you know how to paint, that you know how to paint. Okay, and then obviously the upper part of the step would get some light in comparison to the rest. So I know my list is very simple, and good note takers get free brushes. If you like my brushes and want to buy them, but you can't, you can always write good notes for me, and I will give you a free set of brushes. So if I find some good brushes, for some good notes, I'll give you brushes, and you can post those notes to Reddit. Give it to Reddit. Right, so this is obviously not this. These two are not the same. And I'm just going from lightest to darkest. The light is coming from this angle. These are the light areas. It seems like you connected this corner to the far end, even though this corner was part of this surface area. All of this surface, this entire side is all the same guy. It's all the same surface. Okay, I don't know what this is. If it's a little extra elevation, then you need the rest of the elevation in there as well. You can't just do one side. So maybe it gets a little more light, and then there's an extra little fraction. So you're sculpting without the sculpting program. And that's what you have to do as an artist. What is going on? What is happening? Son of a bitch. Okay. Don't know what this stupid program just did. Slight little drop. Okay, that makes a little more sense. And then we've got, I feel like this guy is at a tilt. It's not as exposed to the light source. So I'm going to just slightly drop him in percentage. Just like so. And then if the light source is coming from this side, there's an entire cast shadow coming off this corner on this step. And it's borrowing some of the highlight from here, just like that. You see that little detail? Okay. So it's just about stacking these cubes. It's just about stacking them. So if you had a cube, unless we had like tiny little feet every time, you have to give us that z-axis tilt. So that z-axis, you have x and y, and then you have z, which is the volume measurement. And if the cast shadow is moving on this way, then that part erases. So what's x, y, and z? We have x, y, and we have z. We need this z dude, so we added z here. See that? X, y, we added z. X, y, and we added z. Alright, make sure to add z to the ground of your work because it is part of finding geometry. So let's see some lists. What are the lists? And let's see a before and after as well. So we've got before, no sense at all, 0 sense, all things go. You had a great shape though, you had a wonderful shape. Is this my shape? I don't know, is this one of my form studies? It looks very familiar to me. Maybe it's from a tutorial I did. I'm not just complimenting myself. Before, after, all that bounce light has come out. It's illuminated areas. We've measured the bounce light as a total presence, as the total presence of the object. This cast shadow is all wrong. Please ignore this. We've stacked all of our lightest to darkest per side. So we've got the light region, we've got the dark region. We've found our arrows. These task lists help you organize your thought process because in the mind of an artist, they look at something like this, they open the blank canvas, and I swear to you, I've seen this before, they just start doing stuff like this. Alright, they got a nice tiny brush, because why not? Alright, they do shit like this, and then they forget to use lasso, and then they start doing... I'm doing what Istebrak told me to do. I'm using a soft brush. Alright, but if they had a task list, then they'd, oh, okay, so I'm not going to try to use lasso first. I'm going to try to, like, create my geometry. Oh, first of all, of course, my light source is coming from this direction, and then I have my geometry, and then, alright, so I have this basic shape, and then I'm going to plan out my arrows. So the light source is coming from here, so most likely this is A, this is the lightest, and this is the darkest area. This is the most displaced, so this would be Z. And then everything else is a step in between. Let me find any more parallel areas where A and A, these are both A's here. This is a B, let's say this is a C. This is also displaced more on the other half of the alphabet. And then this guy and this guy, they're parallel, so this is also a Z, but this might be susceptible to some bounce light. This might be susceptible to some bounce light. Okay, I got that set up. Now I'm going to start assigning values. Maybe I'll start with a midtone. It'll help me figure out the values. So find the midtone when you're assigning lightest and darkest. So in this list, finding lightest and finding darkest are both related to knowing what the heck your midtone is. What is your midtone? Midtone is like the actual ID of the object. So finding lightest and finding darkest based off midtone. Or you can sneak in midtone as step 3. Find the midtone of the object. But finding geometry is also part of outlining, so it's just outlining what I just did. So let's say that finding midtone is 3, finding lightest and darkest is 4 and 5, or it could just be 4. And then just cleaning up with your lasso tool towards the end. So then get your lasso and clean up. And this is just for geometric form studies. Organic form studies are a pain in the butt, because they are working with two completely different opposite ways that values climb and drop. What's the rule for geometric and form studies? For every plane, there's one value. For every surface area, there's only one value. One value per plane. One brushstroke per value. One brushstroke per plane. And that's why we're using lasso tool, because lasso tool helps us give one value, assign one value at a time. Okay, so the student outlined their stuff, they found their nice little shape, and then they're going to find the lightest and the darkest. They found a nice midtone. I'm going to just bring my lasso tool, throw it here for my lightest area. This is parallel, so they're both going to get the same. And enough time will pass and you'll be done. And you'll teach your brain how to see this stuff. You'll teach your brain how to respect the light source, which is training wheels. I'm teaching you how to do an illustration just with these basic steps, because in an illustration you will also have to ask yourself, what is my light environment? Where is my light source coming from? What's the direction of the light source? What type of light source is it? Okay, so a quick little lesson today on form studies. If you're having complicated time figuring them out, if they're too complicated for you, I mean, then you have this little task list here. Based off midtone, clean up with lasso. Excellent. For every plane, there's only one value in geometric form studies. Beautiful job. So let's do a quick little critique on the form studies here, but remember, these are completely of a different nature. They do have concrete, native instances where we can see like the geometry when it was a polygon. We can still see the traces of a geometry of a polygon, but it's an organic shape, so we're using soft brush now, not blocking. You don't use a square tool for a round job. We don't use a brick to blend makeup, right? And we don't use a makeup brush to carve, do we? No, it makes no sense. Alright, so when we're looking at this shape, and this shape is kind of cube-like, right? Why on earth? Why? Well, why? Because you didn't follow your task list, or you didn't have it, or you weren't paying attention to the light source. Why would the top of this shape be anything but light? Because it's facing the light source directly. Another thing that you're doing a lot of is throwing in black where it just does not belong. You are using black like it's I don't know. And it's not related to the value of the object, the midtone. The midtone decides all, because it's whether or not, it can even drop that low. If it's a bright white cement block, it's not going to get very dark very fast. Unless there's no light at all, then it'll just, unless it glows, right? So we have all of this excessive use of soft brush, and blocking and polygons help you work with your soft brush better. Why do you think blocking with your polygons makes soft brush easier to use, or makes you more accurate with your soft brush? Why is that? Does anyone have an answer? We talked about the dangers of soft brush. What are they? Alright, so you don't have any zones here at all. Alright, you don't have any real cylinder values. But God bless you, you're trying your form studies. I'm very proud of you for trying them. Keep going. But remember what we've covered today. And I have done an entire class on organic form studies, talked about them. I'm just waiting for the answer now. The highlight and the sides here are just not matching. Edges are more defined and soft brush adds muddy colors. Soft brush brings in values of its own. It does its own thing. It makes you think you're blending right, but you're not. You don't use a square tool for a round job. I love round job. Soft brush tricks you into thinking you have midtones. Excellent, Juan. Beautiful job. It tricks you into thinking you have midtones, and when you block and when you use values and you use lasso tool, it lets you identify regions, neighborhoods of shadow that don't blend. They only blend along the terminator, and that's it. So you used values from here down here and you use values from here up here. That's a big mistake, because you told me with your outline these don't connect. This looks up, this looks this way. They don't share values. Right? They're not neighboring. They don't share their salt. Are they neighbors? Are they beside each other? Is their displacement an acute angle or an obtuse angle? Okay, so I'm blending here. And I'm just trying to find a way to block while also not blocking, which is confusing. Right? Find the point where shadows start at the highest bulge, and then, yeah, I said bulge. And then we're blending along the terminator. They're just wrong. Look at this. Oh Lord. You need more blending. You need more form studies on the basic geometries before you try this shit again. So what you do, alright, I have an assignment for you. Render some more spheres. Find the accurate way to blend. Alright? And then you've got the basic sphere. And then you've got the cylinder. Find the cylinder, blend it. You got a couple pyramids, some cubes, rectangular prisms, triangular prisms. And keep on going through this regimen of solid geometric shapes. So let's look them up. What are our little buddies here? Our little helpers. They're memory tools as well. Geometric anatomy is a memory tool. It comes back later when you're trying to do a nose. Metric shapes. Right. So what are they? I'm trying to find a three-dimensional one for you guys. There we are. Alright. So we've got, it's really shitty. I'm sorry. So we've got spheres. We've got all these cool little shapes. You don't have to try this advanced stuff. This was too advanced for you because it was partial cube, partial geometric, partial organic. Sorry, partial organic, partial geometric. So you need to stop that. Either do a full blob or don't. And do a full geometry or that's it. So start with these, go through one by one. Look at this exact picture right here, copy paste it, and screenshot it, and just go through these. Fill a page up with all of these shapes, tilted, moving around, to teach yourself some perspective as well. And then just focus on finding the right value while using this list, okay? And then you can start trying these complex, super complex organic, but with geometric mesh, organic dressing over a geometric mesh, form studies. They're just too advanced for you at the moment. This is a quick fix for the contrast problem, but it's not me encouraging you to do more of these or even correct these. Just forget these and go back to your basics. I do not have time, I guess, for the male face. I will do it eventually. I'm so sorry. It's a 14-day challenger too. Maybe I can do one this Tuesday for you. But that's it. Thank you everyone for joining. I will see you guys on Tuesday, the 26th, hopefully, if my health allows. Bye everyone.